It took me a good bit of time when I left Belize to get to Japan, and then I moved on to Suez, stopped for a while to see some friends in Giza, checked in on a customer of mine in Alexandria who bought Stetson hats by the shipping container load for his high-end retail shop, and finally made my way across the Mediterranean to what they used to think was the end of the world, a place called Gibraltar, to make my next delivery. I arrived in Gibraltar determined to lay low and keep posing as Jimmy as long as possible. How I ended up pretending to be Jimmy was something I wrote about, but that is another story about danger in Dangriga, which you may have read by now. If you did not read it, well, you should know that Jimmy was a former SAS thug working for A.S.P, and that A.S.P is a much more clandestine operation than the SAS, I can tell you. Because I still did not know exactly what all A.S.P was up to, but everybody knows that the SAS is a bad bunch of dudes who know how to shoot up the jungle in Belize. Which is where we nabbed Jimmy, in Belize and I got his tickets and instructions, so I'd been around half the world now pretending to be him, trying to figure out who the real higher-up muckety-muck Grand Poobah was in this A.S.P organization. I was not getting too many clues. One thing I knew was they wanted to help parts of countries become their own country. They suggested that even some people in Texas might want to do that. I had a hard time believing anyone would feel that feeling of wanting to leave America and make some kind of nation south of Oklahoma and north of Mexico. Imagine the trouble that would cause, an independent nation sandwiched between those two. So far, everyone seemed to accept it just fine whenever I would show up and say my name is Noodles Jimmy Noodles. Even though I went through customs under my own real name, Jeffrey A. Stetson. As it says on my passport, I made a delivery at the motorcycle pit stop on Cumberland Road in Gibraltar as if I was Jimmy. Of course, the British are there at the border to stamp your passport, but you are basically in Spain, so everybody's playing some kind of game here, I guess. Now, I'd been around Jimmy enough to have some idea how to talk like him. You have to start out with a lot of old beans thrown in there and then move on up to calling everything bloody when you're mad or just wanting to sound tough. When in doubt, say, in it. Talking like Jimmy seemed to work pretty well in Japan. I guess they figured a white guy would show up. Didn't matter if he was 6'5" like Jimmy or more like the numbers reversed, like me. So when I made my delivery with the package from Japan at the motorcycle shop, the feller in a leather jacket with a skull on the back said, "Jimmy, at noon you're supposed to meet a man, codename Boris, down at Roy's Fish and Chips in the main square, and he will give you your next instructions. Boris will arrive on a cycle at 11:55 exactly. He'll have a big Cuban cigar in his mouth, and you should watch the restaurant from a distance until he arrives, then come sit at a table next to Boris, order some fish, then ask him, 'Is this haddock or cod?' His response will be, 'I'm floundering for an answer.' Then you say, 'I'm trolling for instructions.' Boris will tell you your next move. Good luck, Jimmy, brother." And he gave me a secret handshake which I had learned in Japan by watching the Japanese A.S.P guys, and I gave it right back. "Thanks, old bean," I said in my best Jimmy voice. Well, that whole code sounded like real spy stuff to me, so as you can imagine, I was agreeable to the meeting. I memorized the sayings that I would have to say, spent a good hour on it so I wouldn't forget. I thought about writing it down, but realized that could be dangerous. It was early in the morning, and I had about 6 hours to kill, so I looked around the town a bit, took a cable car ride up to the top of the Rock of Gibraltar, and so on. Well, they have monkeys up there. Somebody said it's the only place in Europe with real wild monkeys. And they're so wild the Park Service feeds them carrots and potatoes and bananas because otherwise they would attack the tourists and steal their granola bars, which the monkeys seem to prefer over starvation. I guess I would too, but I've never had to stoop so low as to eat a granola bar yet. My daddy says those are for hippies. I caught him eating one once. He said it was because they was high in fiber. And I said to myself, this is why he does yoga, even though he calls it 100% genuine Texas-style limbering up. So I stay away from granola bars because next thing you know, I'll be smoking the marijuana and sitting in my trailer watching old VCR tapes of aerobics girls working out their buns of steel, which look frankly just a little softer than steel to me.